Welcome to the STARS program, seniors taking active roles in society. And now, here's your host, ANITA FINLEY.
I'm talking with Dr. Michele Reillo, and she's a Ph.D. person who works in the field, many fields, but she loves hyperbaric oxygen. She loves the idea of all the good it can do, and unfortunately, we think it can do a lot more than is allowable by Medicare to be reimbursed. However, this wonderful organization has been at it for many years, but some very exciting news has just happened. And I'm going to let you hear what Dr. Reillo has to say about this. So welcome to our show, Dr. Reillo.
Thank you, and you're so kind of you to have me.
So let's see. I was just telling Dr. Reillo that I always watch The Good Doctor, which is about someone that has autism, but he's, I guess, very high on that scale, but yet he certainly has it. And now, what can you do there at the Hyperbaric Center? I guess it's called the Neubauer Hyperbaric Neurologic Center in Fort Lauderdale-By-The-Sea.
That's correct. What's really exciting is that the Neubauer Center has recently received accreditation for Medicaid reimbursement for autism, and I'd like to talk a little bit about why that's so significant. Hyperbaric oxygen therapy, as we know, reduces inflammation in the brain. And while we haven't pinpointed the exact cause of autism, and it's a disorder that we call a spectrum disorder, where what you've just described as in The Good Doctor, very high-functioning autistic young man, and then there are children and adults who are not as fortunate, who have difficulty with speech, memory, social relations. What we do know over the years, and we can credit this to Dr. Neubauer's research many, many years ago, is that hyperbaric increases oxygen to those parts of the brain that are, for lack of better words, stagnated by either damage or cellular dysfunction. So in your brain, when we have circuitry firing to convey information, if those cells are damaged or they're not functioning properly, then what happens is the brain slowly shuts down. I mean, we have areas in autism that involve communication, eye contact, the ability to relate to other people, anger, depression, emotional outbursts, inability to function as a result of all of this. You basically become isolated within yourself. And what we found with hyperbaric, we started 40 treatments, by the way. They're an hour and a half and a very low pressure. What we found is that autistic children and young adults respond very nicely. And I, in my own clinic many years ago, experienced this as well. We had young children who had difficulty with speech or being able to convey any type of information. And after a few treatments, they were interactive. Their eye contact was remarkable. And that's what's so exciting. But now we have Medicaid reimbursement. So if you have a grandchild or a child who is affected by autism or Asperger's, for example, which is another similar disorder, hyperbaric can be prescribed for your child or young adult, and it's definitely worth giving a shot because this is something that is sustainable. Once we treat, then we can sustain that treatment. It's not like you're going to be in a hyperbaric chamber for the rest of your life. That damage is definitely treatable, and those results are definitely sustainable. So that's what's so exciting about this. And I wanted to relay this to all the listeners because this is big news that the Neubauer Center is able to now treat and receive reimbursement.
And because of that, let me give everyone a way to contact them. If you have someone who you love and you want them helped, and I'm sure you do, this is the phone number. Get your pencils out. It's 954-771-4000. 954-771-4000. And the website is oceanhbo.com. oceanhbo.com. That's the Neubauer Hyperbaric Neurologic Center, and that's right there at Lauderdale-By-The-Sea. Why do you think, Dr. Reillo, that all of a sudden Medicare decided to do this?
Well, I think that the research in pediatrics, and it has been supported by many pediatric organizations, the research supports that across the board, that that's not a placebo effect, meaning it only occurs in one center, that across the board in various studies around the world, that hyperbaric at low pressure is relayed very significant results in these children. And I think that that is what has gotten the attention of Medicaid, and so that we now have an option. There are no options. Simply using educational tools and interacting and play and is not enough, because brain damage is treatable with oxygen. The only way to get oxygen to the brain is using a pressurized chamber and giving oxygen under pressure, very low depth, not going very deep, meaning that it's just a little bit of pressure. And all you have to do is clear your ears, swallow like you're in an airplane, or blow against a pinched nose. Very comfortable. You can watch television. There's always someone there next to you, always an attendant, always in good hands. The doctor's right there in the room. These are changing times where we are seeing high incidences of autism and Asperger's, something that certainly in my generation, and I guess I can speak for you, coming up, we didn't see this. So
True.
This is a phenomenon,
That's true. And would you please tell everybody the difference in Asperger's and, what is the difference between the two?
It's a really fine line. Asperger's syndrome, often the individual can relate and have social interaction, relatively high-level functioning as far as communication, but there's a disconnectedness with the ability to perceive and perhaps behave appropriately. Autism is a range, again, they're high-functioning autistic children and adults who can convey information and relate, but the majority of people with autism have enormous social difficulties and difficulties with communication. Asperger's, we see that as being very different. It's more of an emotional disconnectedness that's prevalent. There are a lot of people can function in the world with Asperger's and go to work and really have the ability to relate to other people, but their perceptions and emotional connectedness is it's lacking, and that has to do with the amygdala in the brain, a little nut-shaped part of your brain, and it appears to be dysfunctional in autism and in Asperger's syndrome. And that lack of connectedness, meaning your ability to feel, perceive, empathize, that can be changed by oxygenating that part of the brain. But it's very, very deep inside your brain. And there's only one way to get to that, and it's pressure and oxygen.
It seems so smart and so simple, and you wonder why we're not, that every single medical practitioner has a tech there and a hyperbaric unit.
I agree with you completely. For the lack of wording, having been all over the world in my lifetime and seeing how hyperbaric is used overseas, with multiple sclerosis, with brain injury, aggressively in treating neurologic complications, stroke, for example, Guillain-Barré, and we're very limited here in this country because of the reimbursement by insurance companies for wound care. And even that is becoming problematic with insurance companies. I think that we're going to reach a point where we're going to come full swing, where people are going to realize that unless we do something neurologically, and here's the angle, is the football players with chronic traumatic encephalopathy. That's what's really bringing hyperbaric to the forefront. because that level of brain damage, which causes Parkinson's, dementia, ALS, which is Lou Gehrig's disease, all from traumatic brain injury, all from repetitive head injury, concussion. That's what's really bringing things to the forefront. We know that, multiple football players are using hyperbaric because they're frightened that they are going to wind up demented or developing ALS later in life. And it's almost a guarantee that if you play football for a period of time, or any sport, including soccer, that you have repetitive head injury, that you will wind up with some type of brain damage. I mean, in the Boston study, it was 93% of the college athletes that they studied had brain damage. And that's a significant number.
Yes, it is. It's horrible. So
that's what's coming. That's why autism, Asperger's, post-stroke, concussive injuries, brain injury, that's all coming to the forefront now because of our interest in football.
And isn't it? It's wonderful, but it's sad that poor Dr. Neubauer, who knew this 35 years ago, has fought and fought and fought because he saw it with a lot of the young children coming in from all over the world, and he of course couldn't do it free for everybody. He did as best he could, but he had so many true stories, and yet it went on deaf ears.
That's correct. And what's interesting now, all these years later, is that the research he did many years ago has now been validated. And there's going to be reissuance of his book, and I'm very privileged to be working with the center to reissuing, a lot of his work. And what's interesting is that we're getting validation now all the time that he has spent treating near drowning, treating people who had strokes, and treating people. We had begun in the late 70s or in the early 80s. We had begun to see beginnings of autism and children with cognitive dysfunction. Certainly not at the epidemic we have now, but it was very unusual. And he received enormous criticism from his peers in the medical community, and ironically, they were wrong.
Yep, they were. They were very wrong, and he and his family really took a lot of hits for what they did. But now, now it's good. It's all coming out to be true, and it's a wonderful thing. Now tell me, when if a child has autism, it's hard for the child to know the difference, probably, but the parents know the difference. Have you ever interviewed the autistic child to find out something? Could they express this to you?
Yes, as a matter of fact, children with autism who have some capability, have above the age of 3 or 4, capability of communication, they will understand that there's a difference between not being able to find words or to speak to you or reach out to you than after treatment, than before. And I remember we had this young girl in a chamber in Baltimore, and we treated her. She had autism, and she's very withdrawn, and she didn't like to be touched or held. And one of the first things is that not only did she recognize her mother, but she actually reached out for her mother's hand. Now, those small increments are so significant to parental bonding and to child development, and they make the world of change, because without that bonding, humans are not designed to live alone in isolation. I mean, that's not how we operate in the world. And so they can recognize the difference, and they show you either physically or, by expressing, Mommy, I feel different,
right.
I feel more, awake, and that they understand. People know intuitively when you're in a very, very dark place, but you may not be able to reach out for that help.
Right. Yeah, well, you have been doing this. How long have you, been doing this in your field? I know that you're a neurologist. Is that right?
Well, I'm a clinical researcher, and my background is in brain injury. And I was trained under Dr. Neubauer in the early 1980s. And so, as my birthday is coming up, I'll be 58. So I was in my late 20s then, and so I've been doing this a long time.
You have
30 years.
You have.
Yeah, 30 years. Yeah.
Wow, and it must have been very sad to know so much, and to just feel like you were taking your head, hitting it against a stone wall, that you knew what it could do, and it was a hard thing to get people to pay attention.
Well, it is. I think over the years, I think one thing I have learned is that you cannot teach people conscience. That is something that we have lost with the internet, with the gaming, all of that disconnectedness. And I encourage everyone to put down the tablets and all of that. Put it away. Put the iPads away, and learn how to write by hand, have a conversation with your family, with your children, use building blocks, use Legos, all the things that we grew up with. Return to the basics, because that's what I've learned over the years, is those basics allow children to develop conscience. And with conscience, then when we come full force and we see something so wrong, like having hyperbaric discredited, then you recognize that it's wrong, and you can stand up against people who are saying it's wrong and say, wait a minute, you are incorrect. But you have to have a conscience to be able to do that. So I think that's what hyperbaric has taught me over the years, is that it's basic, it's simple, and the element of conscience allows you to fight for what's right. I mean, if we don't have integrity, what do we have?
You're so right. You really are everything you said is so perfect. And of course, there are people who can afford to pay for the hyperbaric oxygen by themselves, and
right.
They do it. They know the difference. And Dr. Neubauer, I think, used to say, before you take an exam, get into a hyperbaric unit, and you'll see the difference in how well you do. That's
correct. And Dr. Teller, I'm his wife. Dr. Teller was a former atomic bomb scientist, and he used it, and his wife did well into their 90s. And he was one of Dr. Neubauer's friends, and he was a brilliant scientist. And the key component there is that he knew that the secret to maintaining mental capability was oxygen. You do not have to deteriorate because you age. That is a fallacy. It is completely erroneous. Your mental capabilities do not deteriorate as you age. That is not a cause and relation factor. And that's something you can do something about. And I think that that's really important that we let people know, regardless of your age, that your brain does not have to deteriorate, and that you can do something by simply getting in a hyperbaric chamber. But again, the key component is oxygen is the source of life. If we take away oxygen, we're not here. So that's what it's a very simple message. I think it's a wonderful Easter message.
It is
an element of life, and so I encourage you all, if you have children or friends or if you have issues with brain injury, to go to the Neubauer Center, take a tour of the center, call them, and walk in and really understand what this is about, and then take the next step, because things don't get better unless you take that initiative.
So my guest is Michele Reillo, who is Dr. Reillo, and she really is from the Neubauer Hyperbaric Neurologic Center, and that's down in Lauderdale-By-The-Sea. I'll give you their phone number to make that appointment, 954-771-4000. You can go to their website, which is oceanhbo.com. And I like what you just said. So do you think that one session in the hyperbaric oxygen unit would do anything for someone if they're not having any problems? For example, for me, that I would just like to go and get charged up.
Yes, without a question. The first thing you'll notice is mental clarity, and that your vision changes. That and then your vision will suddenly become crystal clear. And then you'll sleep like a baby that night. And then the next day, you'll notice that your energy level is dramatically different. And that study I did actually on fatigue in patients with autoimmune diseases, we treated fatigue in a hyperbaric chamber. And that fatigue is directly related to a buildup of byproducts, toxins from cellular damage. And that's what hyperbaric reverses. It reduces inflammation and cellular damage. And so the first thing you notice is that you're energetic and that your mind is clear, you're focused. It's amazing. It's absolutely amazing.
And how long do you have to be in that chamber for one time?
We generally treat for an hour, and sometimes for an hour and a half at the most. But it's a good time to take a nap away from the world.
And when you get out, can you drive your car home?
Of course. Of course.
I have to think about that. That might be very exciting for me to do that.
I think it would be wonderful.
Yeah.
And I think we should have an expo day where people come and visit the chamber, and maybe you have a broadcast, and it's a hands-on type of an experience, because I think part of it is people are afraid of something that's new. It really is completely non-invasive. I mean, you should be not afraid of getting in a hyperbaric chamber as opposed to getting behind the wheel of your car.
Right. That we should be afraid about, frankly.
That we should be afraid of.
And the traffic, we should. So that's a very good experience. And so if you have nothing wrong, it's going to give you even clearer vision, and it's going to give you more energy, and it's going to give you, an overall feeling of exuberance, it sounds like. But if you do have something wrong, that's when you really, and there are doctors down there, so they're going to treat you. And I guess even if I do it, they'll want to have certain things that they need to know ahead of time.
Well, they'll assess you. But if you go into a chamber simply for the experience that, we all have insomnia, fatigue, where none of us are getting any younger day by day, joint pain, all of that dissipates. It's amazing. We did a Zika study this year, and one of the remnants of Zika, after people have Zika, is horrific joint pain.
Wow.
It doesn't go away. And we treated people in a hyperbaric chamber, and that reduced the inflammation around the joints, and the pain went away. And again, you knock down the inflammation, then your body isn't sending pain signals to your brain. And that's what's so exciting about all of this. So if you go in with any type of fatigue or muscle pain, that's why the athletes use hyperbaric routinely in their training, because it reduces lactic acid, and so their muscles recuperate very quickly.
What do you
Most
wear?
Football players have them.
What do you wear when you're in there?
We give you scrub suits. They're cotton, and if that's something uncomfortable, you just wear cotton clothes, shorts and a t-shirt. Don't take any toys in or any electronics. It's you and your clothing, and take a nap. You can watch television, and that's it. Very simple.
That's very interesting. It's the first time we've really had this kind of a conversation. I'm glad we're doing that. So, and you come down, you have appointments, and then you come down from St. Augustine to do this.
Yes.
But I know that they do have doctors there regularly, don't they?
Yes. Every day. Every day.
Right.
Dr. Rodas is there every day.
Right. I do remember.
Is there every day.
Mm-hmm.
So, so you're, just give a ring, take an appointment, stop in, and, let's get the treatment process going. It's a new day now where we're facing a lot of dementia, brain changes in our society. And we're seeing, unhealthy manifestations of that. Violent behavior, anger outbursts, teenagers that have unbelievable behavior problems. Those are very worrisome. The indices of things that are changing the brain. So, if you have a child or a family member who's experiencing any of those symptoms, please, visit the Hyperbaric Center.
What other, I heard the list of things, of course, which I think are happening because of all the technological aspects of our life, but what other diseases? I know that at one point we were talking about cerebral palsy. We were talking about other diseases when Dr. Neubauer was around. The stroke, we know that it can help someone with a stroke. Right.
Ischemic stroke, any type of cerebral vascular accident, the transient ischemic attacks, TIAs, where people don't really have the stroke, but they have episodes where they can't speak or have numbness, and it all has to do with vascular changes in your brain. Reflexive sympathetic dystrophy, that's a very painful disorder that a lot of athletes, tennis players, basketball players, it affects generally one limb or a couple limbs, and hyperbaric reverses that completely.
Well,
any retinal issues. I mean, the first thing, if you have something wrong with your retina, the place you want to be is in a hyperbaric chamber, because that will save the retinal artery to your eyes.
So, Dr. Reillo, I apologize. This is so interesting, but we've just now been given the sign that we have to leave everyone, but maybe we continue about this in the future.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, I'm going to do that. I'm going to make an appointment and get down there.
Wonderful.
Okay. Thank you so much also. Bye.
Bye-bye.